So, as time ends up rolling on, it has come to my attention that I may have been a little bit off about John Collins. Not to say that I didn't expect him to do well this season, but I didn't quite expect this level of production, and it really has me scratching my head and wondering if he could actually be traded. And I think that it is a lot more likely at this moment, obviously, than it was at the beginning of the season or at really any point last year. Obviously, that $26.5 million price tag is something that will have a little bit of an effect on some teams' willingness to step into that role, and he does have a player option of his own, so he could always end up at the end of his contract deciding to just forego and jump into free agency. So the bed is hot, and the Jazz are going to try and most likely get him up out of Utah when the trade deadline occurs. Now, with that in mind, he is one of the hottest commodities on the Utah Jazz roster. Obviously, you've seen articles about Walker Kessler. We've covered a little bit of Colin Sexton. Jordan Clarkson has been honestly the biggest loser so far because he just hasn't been fitting the bill lately. And while he did, I think at the beginning of December, at the time of me making this video, match his previous mark from November where he had two 20-point games. He's only played 2 games in December so far, had 20 points in both of them on pretty solid efficiency, so maybe he's turning a corner, but 2 games isn't enough for Jordan Clarkson in particular for me to say, okay, that makes sense. But today we're going to be talking about what exactly John Collins has done this season to make me change my mind and maybe backpedal a bit, and also what 3 teams seem to be interested, at least mildly, in particularly procuring his services. With that being said, it's your boy Wraith Hoops. If you're new to the channel, go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into this one. The Dallas Mavericks, the Brooklyn Nets, and the Washington Wizards are the 3 teams that are the most intrigued by John Collins' current shooting prowess as well as his offensive game as a whole. Defensively, he has been a lot better than he was last year with the Utah Jazz, and we could just chalk that up to him, giving more effort or him being used to the system more and being more understanding. But I think another part of it just comes down to his motivation at the very beginning of the season when in press conferences he was just saying that he wanted to be a starter. He felt like he's a starting caliber player, and he would be very displeased if he was put into a position where that wasn't the case. Well, to start the season, that was not the case because he came off the bench in the stead of Walker Kessler, who, to his credit, has been proving why he deserved to be a starter. At the moment, Walker Kessler's averaging 11 and 10.5, so he's showing that he has stepped up by comparison to last season where people felt like he had a regression in his sophomore year. John Collins, though, still wasn't going to take that line down, and when he got the opportunity to step in, Walker Kessler was down, while Lauri Markkanen was down, he made use of those reps, and he proved himself to the highest degree, to the tune of, so far this season, only playing 29.5 minutes, but having 18 points, 8 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1.5 steals, and about a block a game, shooting 53.5% from the field and 43.5% from three-point range, which is about 2% higher, if I remember, compared to last December when he first joined the Jazz, because he was shooting pretty well from three-point range. He was averaging 3.4 attempts a game, hitting about 1.1, 1.2. This season, he's averaging 3.3 three-point attempts and hitting about 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. So he's showing a lot better game about himself. He's also shooting 88, almost 89% from the free throw line, and his true shooting is 63.9%, and you really can't beat that by any stretch of the imagination. Now, he is having his highest scoring season since his 3rd year in the league when he was in Atlanta, and this is by all comparisons and all stretches of the imagination better than he was last season with the Utah Jazz, because yes, the defensive deficiencies were there and they were nauseating at times, and offensively, while his shooting was there really strong at the beginning of the season, after the trade deadline he ended up falling off a cliff, and it seemed like almost he re-injured his hand or something, because he dipped all the way up from that 41% mark down to 37.1% on the same number of attempts basically per game. That said, from the free throw line, he also had a not terrific season, but also not terrible. He was 79.5% on 2.7 attempts. And like I said, he's shooting 88.5%, almost 89% from the free throw line this season on 3.7 attempts, which is also, by the way, a significant uptick from anywhere else in his career, where it's a 5% increase about 4 or 5 seasons into his career, where he shot 83% on 3.2 free throw attempts. Now, from the three-point range, there's never been a season that he's had where he shot this well. He's eclipsed 40% for an entire season only one time in his career, and that was his third season in the league, where he also averaged his career high points to date at 21 and a half. I'm not going to sit here and say this is the peak John Collins, but I'm also not going to say that it's not peak John Collins, because we could say that this is an opportunity for him to showcase who he is as a player and tell other teams, hey, I know I'm with the tanking Jazz, but at the same time, I hoop. I'm a baller. Yes, I was in Atlanta and things didn't really work out. Yes, I injured my hand, but my hand's not hurt anymore. I still got that burner on me. I can still spark it up. In fact, I can spark it up better than I ever have in my career. I'm still a lob threat. I'm not going to be the most elite rim protector, but I can help backside. I can end up rotating really well. I move my feet well. Once I get acclimated to your defensive scheme and system, I'm not going to be a negative defender to that much of a degree. In fact, I might be one of your better defenders. I'm not going to be the greatest, but I'm definitely going to be a lot better than what y'all saw last year when I first got to Utah. Because again, I spent the entirety of my career up until that point in Atlanta. It was an entirely different scheme, an entirely different vibe. I was playing defense a lot differently. There were different expectations for me. I came to Utah and things were just different. And I kind of like that for him. In fact, I love that for John Collins, because he deserves the opportunity to show that he is a hooper. And he's one of those guys where he has the infectious nature where he wants to do better. You could say that he's not necessarily the dog that Colin Sexton is, but we're not going to sit here and act like he's just the little feline that scurries from trash can to trash can on a dark alley. He's the type of guy where he's going to put in the work every day. He's going to be a model leader for most guys. And his attitude never really shows that he's down. Yes, at the beginning of the season, he was like, hey, I feel like I'm a starter. I always believe that I'm a starter. I play like I'm a starter. And then when it didn't happen, we didn't see any articles talking about how John Collins was disgruntled. We didn't see anything talking about John Collins has been a force in the locker room negatively. We just heard nothing. And then he started hooping. He started playing harder. He started getting more starts. He started getting more opportunities. He started 15 out of 24 games this season. And while I said he's only played 29 and a half minutes a game, he's been playing phenomenal in those minutes. And honestly, I think more than anything, aside from that chip on his shoulder, the fact that this also is a defining year for his career and his next destination, he's trying to showcase to teams, hey, go ahead and drop a bag on me. I'm worth it, trust. And while he may not be your first option or your second option on a championship caliber team, I do believe he is a very valuable role player. And he has been showing that when he's locked in and when he's willing to give that extra effort, he is a phenomenal player. And I don't think there's any area of the basketball game where I would say that he's been particularly terrible. Now, obviously, we understand he's a lot better offensively than he is defensively. But like I said, again, he's also not nearly as bad defensively as he was at the beginning of last year or even at the midway point last year. After the trade deadline for the remainder of the season, defensively, he looked pretty solid. And then coming into this year, there were some question marks. Was he going to pick up? Was he going to stay the same? Was he going to digress? We just didn't know because it was his second year in Utah. It's not like year 3, year 4, year 5. He's still getting more acclimated. He's still getting more comfortable, and it seems like he bought in entirely. And yes, I understand the Utah Jazz are extremely turnover prone. Shooting has been a hot commodity, and things have not been going the greatest. Just recently, by the time of me making this video, their most recent loss was to the Los Angeles Clippers, who absolutely waxed the floor, about 144 to 107, I believe. It was a bad game. James Harden dropped 40. But, nevertheless, John Collins has been one of the bright spots for this season, and I just wanted to go ahead and give him a little bit of praise and actually just talk about the fact that he does have the ability to get traded, and the fact that we're actually getting names of teams. Obviously, those 3 teams aren't, the biggest of contenders, but there's still interest from other sides being willing to take on his contract, maybe give some draft compensation, give us a random expiring contract that we just don't really care that much for, opening up minutes next year and even for the rest of this year for guys like Kyle Filipowski, who seem to be more NBA ready than a lot of people expected them to be, or Bryce Sensabaugh, who has been efficient but just hasn't really had enough minutes or enough opportunities to showcase what he's capable of doing. But as always, it's been your boy Wraith Hoops. Let me know what you guys think about John Collins. Let me know if you think he will end up getting traded at this deadline, or do you think they'll end up keeping him and potentially re-signing him in one of the more bold moves that the Utah Jazz would have potentially made. As always, I'm interested to hear your opinion. Go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe if you made it this far in the video. I appreciate you. And as always, good morning, good evening, and good night. No matter where you're in the globe watching, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.